call to order the May 28th, 2025 Lewes Board of Public Works regular meeting. So, moving on. So we have a pledge of allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And when you're silent.
So if you remind an opinion question, that's fine. I may just ask some more.
All right, so we have with us the entire board, Barbara Curtis, Preston Lee, Richard Nichols, not Richard Nixon. And Bob Heffernan. And then we have an ex officio, Amy, and I want to welcome Amy to our little board. And, as everyone knows, Amy was sworn in as the mayor last Wednesday. And so we look forward to having you, and the city's going to be a wonderful place with you at the leadership. Robin Davis, our general manager, and Mike Hoffman, our legal representation. Oh,
I just sit here
Kimberly.
instead of go up to the there, so that's all. She just manages your.
she's not on the list. Well, for that matter, then, and Sharon Sexton.
Yeah.
So, the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve?
Now, I have a couple of comments.
Okay, which
Okay.
ones do you want to pull
On
out?
the minutes, I submitted some very minor typo corrections to Sharon, and they've been made. And what they were was the, at the Inframark plant, when they talked about the digesters, it was a coating rather than a coating problem with the walls. And the loan percentage was not 22%, it was 2% for the projects we have going forward underwater. So those have been corrected, and
Anyone else want anything else pulled, or? So do you have a motion to approve the consent agenda as with the corrections made?
So moved.
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Receive the Inframark report? Oh, Jeff, I didn't even see you there. Hiding in the corner.
You like that?
Good afternoon. Okay, so to start off, one thing that is not on the report, but a piece of good news, Tariq, our electrician, did pass his master's exam, so we will have a licensed master's electrician on site moving forward.
Oh, great.
Congratulations.
So going through, the coating of the chemical containment area, I spoke with the contractors who we talked to about getting that done. The date tentatively right now is around September 15th. They are completely booked out for the summer, and we also have to wait for the new tanks to come in for the replacements on those chemicals as well. Design Plastics is in the process of providing quotes for the chemical replacement tanks. I spoke with them yesterday, and he should hopefully have quotes to me by next week. Pump Station 17, we did have a meeting, Robin, Ben, and myself, with Teal to look at possible options for replacement. We're still waiting to hear back from Teal on kind of rough estimates on the cost of each option. And I'm hoping to be able to present something to you guys with cost estimates on the next board meeting. The potential alum replacement. So we're gonna set up a test run for that particular chemical from Neo Water. That test is being run at one of our other projects up north in Downingtown, Pennsylvania. So far, the data looks good. The cost per pound of the chemical is higher, but the removal seems to be better and would have less impact on the membranes than what the alum we're currently using. The new pumps for the old EQ tank, which have already been purchased, are scheduled to be shipped July 10th. Now, I did try to include a chart for you, Tom, if that's, I hope that's what you're looking for.
Yes, I was going to comment, that is perfect. I think this is exactly what we're looking for.
Okay.
And I realize this is the first step, and I really appreciate that.
Yes.
I think one of the things that needs to be done is consolidate underneath the beginning part you have, the table, because there are projects that are in one and not the other, and vice versa.
Under the projects table,
Yeah,
and to consolidate that into the chart.
yeah.
Yes, so that is the goal. I wanted to bring the chart to you this time to make sure this is what we're looking for and that we'd like to move to this format.
Anyone else have any comments on the Gantt chart?
Just education for me, what's a Neo water trial?
So Neo Water is the company that produces a chemical for phosphorus removal. We are currently running a trial at one of our other facilities. They're going off of ferrous and trying the Neo Water. The benefit to the chemical, from what they're saying, is, like I said, the cost per pound would be higher than the alum we currently use, but we would use less, so we would save money in the long
That's
run.
what you just said.
Yeah, and then we would also, the way that the chemical reacts with the phosphorus would cause less, would eliminate the sludging issue that we have in the membranes now from the alum. So I'm hoping that would save money and also help lengthen the life of the membranes, or at least the efficiency of them.
One of the things I see missing from the list is the membrane doors.
The membrane,
Doors.
so we have seals on order for Train 4. Train 3 is working properly. We were able to do the clean. Train 4 is not. I have seals on order from Sherwood Logan. As soon as those seals come in, we're going to drain it down, replace the seals. And the engineers I spoke with at Sherwood Logan think that that's the most likely cause, is that the seals have broken away.
And I know when you walked down, you mentioned that. I just didn't see it on any of the lists here.
Oh, I apologize. I thought that was on there.
No worries.
I will make sure to include it for next month. Hopefully we have them in by
That's
then.
like a month or two, is that,
For the trial, for
no, for the seals?
the seals, yes, I believe it should be hopefully next month.
Okay.
So, one note, and I think I'd mentioned to you, Tom and Barbara, on the walkthrough with the Veolia report, we had a bit of an anomaly on Train 4. So we had a VFD go. We replaced the VFD. We thought that was the end of it. We found that Train 4 was running in an awkward way. The flows are spiking and dropping continuously, which is causing a bit of an anomaly in the chart, so it looks like there's a bouncing pattern. We found that the flow meter for that train has also gone haywire, and that the Lovejoys on the pump were destroyed. So I'm not sure what happened that caused all of these things to malfunction at the same time, but it seems like we had something, the VFD failed, it locked up the Lovejoy, and somehow the flow meter also is failed. So we actually had the calibration tech out today. He tested it, the meter is bad, we have to have it replaced. We're looking to do that Friday, and we're looking to replace the Lovejoys tomorrow.
Lovejoy is a coupling, right?
The coupling, yes.
Can I ask you a question about?
Yes, sir.
The chart? What's the purpose? It doesn't really explain other than numbers of vendor, memo, and amount.
So, which chart? We are looking at, so that is, yes. That is just was something that we included for this. It is essentially just trying to explain the larger purchases. Anything over $1,000 that we're spending, that lets you see those charges that we're using. So if you look at it, a lot of our larger purchases, a lot of our larger spending comes from pumps and motors, and that just gives you guys a better breakdown so you can see where the money for the maintenance cap is going.
So these are over $1,000 purchases for equipment for this month, this particular month?
No, this is year to date. Year to date.
Year-to-date.
Yes, year to date.
It would be helpful if that was explained
Yes,
somewhere rather than just on a blank piece of paper.
I will add that in there.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting that we've got a table of maintenance fee expenditures, and then we have this new table.
So the maintenance fee expenditures is from this month. That table is just larger purchases from year to date. I will clarify that on the paperwork moving forward.
I had a question, Jeff.
Yes.
Do we check the final effluent from microplastics or nanoplastics?
It is not something that we're testing for now. I believe that there was a study done, I believe when Austin was here, I think there was something tested, but that was before my time.
I ask this because I read a report recently that certain types of MBR systems are excellent at removing nanoplastics and microplastics, and I wondered if we could take credit for that.
Excuse me, don't the filters take out the microplastics, but not the nanos?
I believe so, yes. So our filters run down to 0.04.
Right.
Okay. Any other questions?
Anything else? All right, that's it, thank you.
Thank you.
So receive the president's report. We went on a walk down with, for the electrical system undergrounding for 4th Street and with Sergeant Lundy, who's our consulting electrical engineer. And they've been out here for several other projects for us. And they will be coming back to us. They were, I think, slightly taken aback by the complexity of the project because of the closeness of the buildings to the street and the lack of any land around them. So Sergeant Lundy will be reporting back to us in the next couple of weeks. GMB, we did a wastewater treatment plant walk down on, was Barbara, myself, Robin, and GMB and the Inframark folks. And I have to say that I've never seen the wastewater treatment plant in the 8 years I've been here in better looking condition. It is very, very clean, and I commend, Jeff's gone now, but I commend Infomar for what they've done.
And you said that last time, too.
Yeah, it keeps improving. It does.
I
Even
would say
doing
get
some
off the floor, but
landscaping.
I'm not gonna get off the floor. We had a joint session with the city, and we have another one coming up in July. Robin and I attended a progress meeting with GMB on the water tower, and so it's making progress. We had
So, excuse me, on the water tower, I guess I didn't understand. All construction will end the end of this month.
It's not picking up, isn't it?
Is that what you told me, Ben?
I don't know if you want to take this route or not.
Whoa, wait a minute, on the
It's
table.
not the end of this month, I can take that part.
Okay.
Ben Herman, GMB. So, based on their schedule, the way they've laid out how they want to construct the water tower, they're going to basically stop construction once they finish up the pile cap that they're working on now. Not be here during the summer months related to just cost of housing their construction workers here, and then pick back up in September-ish timeframe to start working on the superstructure, the structure of the tower.
But the steel work is still, the
Oh, steel work,
fabrication
sure, yeah.
is still going on.
Correct,
I
yes,
need site work.
Okay.
I should have said site work.
correct, yes.
And Robin and I attended a University of Delaware stormwater pilot project, and we should be hearing more back from that. Actually, you got this in your report, Robin, I'll leave it to you. And the discussions with Sussex County, and we have Hans Medler in the back, are continuing on the wastewater treatment side, and we'll talk about that a little bit later, and attend the mayor and city council meeting. So at that point, Robin?
All right. Tom took a lot of my,
I was thinking, we shouldn't
yeah,
reverse the
I
order.
guess me and Tom attended a lot of meetings together. Let's see, we did do some additional progress meetings, like the Verdon subdivision, Mitchell's Corner, development projects going on, progress meetings for the header project and the canal crossing. Met with Bob Palmer, they're on the agenda for tonight for and Ben, to review the potential water sewer connections for the property outside on the road. Like I said, it's an agenda meeting. Attended a finance committee meeting. Ben and I also had an initial conversation with a gentleman, Scott, from Del Dot, coordinating the new road bridge project and the new road potential water and sewer project too. There is a DMAC joint council briefing Tuesday evening on June 3rd between 5 and 7. That's at the DMAC facility. We also received a certificate of excellence in reliability for electric from the APPPA.
Congratulations.
Yep, thank you very much. That's one of many, I think. We've constantly do that, so that's kudos to our electric department. As far as some of the projects, major projects, the canal crossing project and the header pipe project are all winding down. We're looking to schedule walkthrough inspections. I don't think that's been done yet. Punch list items and hopefully get those items closed out. Ben talked a little bit about the water tower. Let's see. As far as two of our kind of major combined projects with the cities, the 4th Street, Park Avenue, and the Hornkill projects. As I said previously, the loan closed on both of those projects on March 14th. GMB still moving forwards with concept designs, doing some surveying still for the 4th Street. Looking to hopefully beginning mid of 26 to submit to outside agencies for permits, advertise for bids mid 2026. Hopefully in near September we can start the project. 26 for the 4th Street, and we're looking June of 28 for the completion. As Tom said, we're working with Sergeant Lundy about the estimate for design of underground electric for that in that area. They were a little surprised, and they feel that there's going to be a massive project. Hornkill, GMB has completed all the site inspections for the 11 properties that are outside that have existing septics and wells. Just trying to find the locations for all that because they are going to be connected to our system. Advertised for bids probably August, September of 25, awarding a month after that, hopefully. Start of construction October, November of 25, completion July of 26, hopefully. General project information, we've got an area on our website. You can go on the homepage, scroll down to the projects tabs, and there's a lot of projects that are on there. We're going to provide some updated information on those projects so the public can have a chance to go on our website without having to come in and talk or, talk to someone about it. As usual, as all the projects, once the construction starts on these projects, we hold monthly progress meetings. Public's welcome. That's where they get all their information, more of their information on the updates on the projects. As Tom noted about Gantt charts, GMB has completed a Gantt chart for the 4th Street projects, and we're looking to do the same for Hornkill. So that'll give an idea of where the status is, even during the preliminary review process and all that before construction.
The other thing is tomorrow, hopefully with the weather holds out, the demolition of the deaerating tank will occur. So the Leaning Tower of Pisa.
You got pictures of that?
I got some
Do
pictures.
you have some
Yeah.
pictures of that?
Yeah, I have some pictures too. So that, I was a little worried with the windstorm this morning that,
Are we gonna sell the wood or anything from that?
it's coated and
The structural, it's just rotted. It's bad.
Is it?
It's really, really bad. Yeah, it's scary to even kind of walk around it.
What time?
I was gonna make a table out of it.
I have no idea. And again, I know it's going to be a thing, but I'm pretty sure they're not going to want people around.
No.
Well, out on the trail, we could watch from there, right? Maybe.
I can't stop you from being on the trail. I would just be careful.
Yeah, I would just advise everyone to be cautious.
I like a souvenir piece.
This winter? Yeah. All right. So next item, finance, manager's report. Kim?
In your packets, I'm gonna start with April revenues and expenditures. So just to give an idea of, after you guys approve the yearly budget, I go back, I have a historic spreadsheet to know like what percentages are usually used for each month. So then I take the yearly and work that all out. So the first few months are usually the first quarter. It's a little rough of seeing different flows that sometimes they are not historical. They don't work as historically smooth as you would hope. But overall, our operating revenues are 3.5% below budget. Our expenses are 2.1% below budget. And our non-operating revenues is 38.2% below budget, which sounds like a lot, but that's due to the negative change in market value. Some other notes that I have for you, the water residential irrigation was significantly higher. There are a couple of HOA irrigation accounts that were mistakenly put into residential. It should be in commercial, so that'll be corrected. Repairs and maintenance, electric purchased 2,000 feet of wire, and water purchased new registers for meters. So those were not planned specifically for this month. Other supplies, the stone for the well field driveway, and we sent out lien notices for people that we have the loans for that pay us back. For interest income, we had our quarterly fee, but we still did better than budgeted. So that's great. And like I said, for the change in market value, it was about $38,000 of a loss. And I also got some other questions that I wanted to go over, because if someone else is asking these questions, other people may be too. For depreciation expense, our water and sewer are a bit off. When I did the budget, I did not look at the work orders that still need to be closed in March, so that will continue to be off. And I'd be happy to do a budget adjustment and get that reapproved, or if we just know that that's gonna be off.
Is the total about right?
Oh, we couldn't hear you.
Is the total right?
It will not be.
How far off? Maybe you tell us how far off.
Yeah, I'll give you that number.
Maybe a budget adjustment is in order. Yeah,
This is something about that.
yeah,
It's not.
yeah.
It was brought up specifically, residential electric is down 9% below budget. We actually had 700,000 less kilowatt hours than last year, even though we have 123 more customers. Plus our PCA is about 1/5 of a penny less than last year. And industrial water, SPI and BB are both down. They account, their shortage compared to last April accounted for about 4.5 million gallons. Generally, for big accounts, I wait for a couple months of a pattern before I ask them what's going on. So this is the first month. So if that continues, then I'll be reaching out to them.
Any questions for me?
I have cash reserve as well. At the end of fiscal year '25, which was March 31st, we did get back into scope of the required reserves with our updated budgets. Now we have an updated cash reserve policy. We are showing about $615,000 short. I have no worries that we will be able to replenish that with our state reimbursements for our loan draws. And I will say that not necessarily the utilities are covering what they're supposed to, but as a whole, we will be. And then just other notes that I wanted to put in here, Headworks is completely done and it is amortized. The first payment starts in September. And audit is in full swing. They have all their requested documents, and pretty much every day I'm emailing or Teams meeting of clarifications and backups. And that's all I have.
Any other questions?
Will the cash reserves table be a regular reporting thing from the finance department?
So this historically is presented one time to show how we're performing based on our policy. I will say that the finance committee is very much looking to review that policy and see if that is accurate of how it should be set up.
I'm not sure, I know what you just said.
So our cash reserve policy,
Yes.
the finance committee wants to review the policy to see
If it's accurate, or is it just a different
just that it
process?
should be maybe something different or higher percentages, lower percentages.
Oh, the amount.
Yeah.
The amount, that's
Yeah.
the proper amount. Okay.
Yeah.
So the policy is what they're looking at, or?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Might be nice to see it more than once a year, because when I looked at it, I was, geez, what is this?
You can make it quarterly if you want.
I think it's good, I think it's interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, looks like we've been pretty solid over the past several months, because we were down there like a few years ago.
Yes.
We were in the hole.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you've come back really well.
And the reason that we were down was,
Our capital expenditures was really the driver that we went from a 20 million 5-year plan to 43 million.
and we were paying it out of our reserves rather than.
Yes, there was a large payment to Pilot Town that we paid that out of pocket instead of getting funding. It came from the reserves.
Covered.
We have recovered for fiscal year '25 and we should recover for fiscal year '26.
All right, thank you very much, Kitty. So now we're on to the next section, which is the election of officers. So our charter actually requires officers to be elected after an election year. However, we do elections 1 year when the mayor is elected, there's no election for us. However, it's customary that we do yearly appointments. So with that being said, I'm going to step down and turn it over to Barbara to handle the nomination for the president role.
Thank you, Tom. Okay, I will take nominations for the position of President of the Board of Public Works.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Tom? Tom, it's back to you.
I'm going to go after every one of you. That's a blessing and a curse. No, in seriousness, I've said this before. Working with the board and the staff of the BPW has been a wonderful experience. I consider every one of them to be professional, and frankly, I wouldn't be doing this if it wasn't for the BPW team. So I thank you all guys all. And our Leo solicitor.
You're doing a great job, so thank you very much.
All right, moving on. Do I have a nomination for vice president?
Nominate Barbara.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Welcome, Barbara.
Thank you, Tom. It's a pleasure to serve.
Nomination for secretary?
I nominate Presley.
Have a second?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
And treasurer? We have a nomination for treasurer.
I nominate Richard Nichols.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
And the assistant treasurer.
Nominate Bob Heffernan.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Welcome, everyone. We've got another year now.
All right.
So I think at this point, I'd like to get a picture of the board. So, and we have our staff photographer, Sharon. So let's go on the other side of the table.
No feet, because I got my rain boots on.
So Amy, we're gonna do one with the board and then I want one with you, Amy.
Okay.
He wants to show off his tassel loafers, though.
Well, that's on us. We'll be wallflowers here.
I'm getting out of the way of this.
Okay, everybody else do it?
We get one with Robin and Mike, and then we'll get one with Amy. With us.
We're gonna do this.
Want a flank? We'll flank.
Yep. Uh-oh, Barbara, I might have to get your feet. All right, Amy? I think we're okay.
You keep backing it.
I'll do a boy girl.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sir?
Okay. First item of old business, open forum general discussion on a request from parcel 3358.0.504, new road, for the owner to connect to BPW water and sewer. So Robin, you want to kick this one off?
Okay, this is a follow-up from initial meeting of last month, when the owner of this parcel sent in a letter requesting, that was done by Mr. Palmer on behalf of that client, his client, to requesting for water and sewer services to be connected to his property. A little bit of brief history, as we talked about last month, was this property is a little unique. It's the last parcel on New Road before you hit the New Road Bridge. It does have water service in front of it or across the street, but it's a temporary line that feeds Waterfront Preserve and Tower Hill. That should have probably been replaced by now because of the New Road Bridge project. But as we know, the bridge project is taking longer than expected, so we still have the temporary line there. They're not able to connect directly into that because it's a temporary line. It's bundled together, so there's not an opportunity to do it. As Ben noted at the last meeting, ODW probably won't allow that because the separation there. So in speaking with Ben and Mr. Palmer, there's an opportunity for us to supply water to them about 500-600 feet away to a line that's permanently in the ground still on New Road. But that would mean that the line would have to be run either across the street and then parallel with New Road on the vacant side, or the Pollitt Village side, or run in front of 4 of the 5 parcels on the, I would say, the northwesterly side of New Road. Mr. Palmer, I think, has been meeting with his client and has come up with a kind of a rough estimate on what it would take to do that. But what this would take is the BPW currently does not have rights to serve water to that parcel. We do not have a CPCN yet. We do have sewer. We do serve that area with sewer, or have the opportunity to. So the request is the owner would like to apply for water and sewer services, but for the BPW to supply that services, if the board would take that into consideration and be willing to approve that request. As part of the last month's meeting, there was talk about the opportunity to serve the other 4 parcels on that side of the street. And would that be a thought of the board to put a more permanent line in with the potential of offering water and sewer services for the others? We've not received a request from any of the other 4. I don't know the likelihood of those other people wanting to serve by the board. They might. So at this point, this line can be a temporary line if the board wants to look more of a permanent solution for all 5 properties. Or would the board be willing to say yes to a line just serving this parcel only, in that the owner would have to run a line from his property all the way 500 feet across and connect into the existing main?
A question. The other 4 homes, they're all fairly new, right? And they spent the money to get septic systems and wells. And my guess is that they probably wouldn't be happy with the money it would cost to connect unless or until they have problems with either the quality of their drinking water or their septic fields, perhaps because of rising groundwater tables. So if we were to put in piping, how long-term do we want to think about that? I mean, if their homes if the normal septic system lasts, say, X number of years, or if we predict saltwater intrusion into the wells in X number of years, then we should consider that and have that availability for the homes that are not currently interested. But if X is a long number, then maybe we go with the temporary, and I just don't know what those numbers are.
So do we know what the cost would be to run the 500-foot of line?
But that would be the responsibility of the property owner to do that. It's just like kind of any development.
It'd be a single service, yeah.
Yeah, for a single service, but that would get turned over to the BPW, and we would be responsible for that line from the main to the property. So it'd be a single service line for the water and single service line for which would be a force main, because they would have to have a pump station that the owner would be responsible for, or some sort of E1 pump.
Oh, we would need easements, right, through those properties?
Currently, it looks like there's enough DelDOT right-of-way area to put these lines in, as what Ben has done by this drawing he submitted. So there are easements. Again, that was a conversation that we had with Scott from DelDOT, and then Ben was able to kind of touch bases with Scott again. I was out on Friday, so Ben had a conversation with Scott. And it's noted in there, DelDOT, as part of their project, and maybe I'll let Ben go a little farther, but I think what was said was DelDOT would, if we went ahead, or if we let the owner wanted to go ahead and serve them, and we let the owner do it, and install the line, DelDOT, as part of their big bridge project, would pay for the relocation of that line. As it is. They would not pay if we wanted to, at that time, to change it into a permanent line. They wouldn't pay for that. They would just pay for the difference.
I'm a little confused.
Okay?
There's a $46,000 number in here and a $45,000 number in here. Is that what we're talking about?
I think that's the cost, if roughly, the rough cost, if you want to do a permanent line for that would serve the 5 properties.
So that's
Okay.
envisioning us doing it?
Yes. Yep.
So for $100,000, we could put in a line that would serve the 5 properties, but they might wait Barbara's X period of time.
Or never.
Okay.
Yeah.
Or never. But what's the cost of then just this temporary line you're talking about?
I can let Mr. Palmer, if he was able, wants to, because that would be the responsibility of the owner. It wouldn't, that would not be on the
Can I ask a
BPW.
question just on the two numbers, the 46 and so on? It says the estimated installation cost. Does that include design costs, engineering costs?
Sorry.
You know, if we're making a money decision, where does that?
So it does not, DelDOT has indicated that if we were to do this permanent solution, that work would be included under the design work would be included under that, the new road utility relocation work that we're currently performing.
Who did all this?
That was me. I did that as a rough draft estimate and layout. I'm not ready to sign and seal that, so.
And do we know the 4 homes that are there, are they mound septic or?
I think they're all just regular standard gravity systems, I don't know if Mr. Palmer knows more about it. I don't think there's any mounds out there. I'm not saying newer, but they've been there for a little
Just
while.
supplies with the groundwater table.
For the record, my name is Bob Palmer with Beacon Engineering, representing Mr. Pierkowski. Thank you, everyone, for having me to speak regarding the cost of running the force main from Mr. Pierkowski's property to the connection point that Mr. Davis indicated, we've budgeted between 40 and 60,000 to run a 2-inch force main. And the reason why we selected a 2-inch force main was not necessarily because we needed that size force main in order to be able to run, to pump that far. But we worked with Jason Miller at Fremar & Associates. He's the factory rep for the E1 systems. And presuming that the other homeowners would ultimately connect, a 2-inch force main is what he recommended in order to have all of those 5 lift stations work in harmony. So that will be the cost for the sewer. For water service, I would expect it would probably be in the similar range because it's a force main that would be drilled or trenched in along the edge of the road.
So it sounds like we're looking at the same amounts. But one where the homeowner pays it all and one where we pay it. Is there any legal way we could kind of split the difference?
Well, I think, so just to clarify, so is there a different, as I understood it, there was a permanent, let me take away the permanency. There was a solution that would include the potential for all 5, and there was a solution that was just for this property owner. But what I heard Mr. Palmer say is that they're one and the same, or did I hear that incorrectly?
It sounds like what Mr. Davis presented from Mr. Hearn, that we're more or less talking about the same thing. If we were to go our own way and to a temporary connection, it would probably be 1.25 inches to 1.5 inches diameter pipe. We're talking pennies over 700 feet in material cost difference because the installation cost is essentially the same. And that's why we considered 2 versus, 1.5 inches to 1.25 inches.
So I think the tier of questions and so DelDOT didn't have any concern about having what would ultimately be BPW infrastructure, which is how you can use the right of way, but ultimately BPW infrastructure in that right of way, correct?
Correct.
And I didn't quite understand the difference of the delta, what they would cover versus what they wouldn't cover. Can you help me understand that?
So DelDOT has indicated that if we're only doing a line to service just the one parcel, that they would pay to relocate that if needed. The delta would be if we go with the service to serve all 5. If there's a difference between, they'll only kick in the amount that they would have been to serve just a single parcel. So round numbers, if it was $40,000 to serve the one parcel, their contractor comes in, there's going to be an economy of scale to serve the one parcel versus in the overall project. They will only kick in whatever that number is to serve the single parcel to the 5 parcel project.
But it's one and the same. It's the same. What we're hearing is it's the same line. It's the line that is being proposed is the line that can serve all 5.
Generally for the force main, that is correct. For the water main, it would probably need to be a little bit bigger size. There would also be, for a single parcel, there wouldn't be the individual connections to each of the other 4 parcels on both accounts. So there's a little bit added cost to go with the 5 parcel approach versus the single parcel approach.
Did DelDOT indicate why it makes a difference in terms of if it's ultimately BPW infrastructure for the one parcel owner versus BPW infrastructure for the 5? It's moving a BPW line.
Because I think of the timing of it all, because we can't stop the sands of time of moving. The parcel owner wants service, they can't technically, I feel like they can't technically stop and say, no, we don't want your line to be put in place and you can't serve this person. The other 4 parcels haven't requested that service, so I think that, I'm not going to speak for Delta, but I feel like their position was, because we're only dealing with one person, we're not going to pay for a full approach because that serves more than just the one person, if that makes sense.
I think the challenge, I'm just kind of taking high level. So from the BPW's typical policy is that if an extension is required, that whoever is requesting that extension is responsible for covering the costs of that extension. And then it gets turned over to the BPW, it's the BPW infrastructure. And when it is BPW infrastructure, you have the opportunity to use the right-of-way, but if DelDOT has to come in and move the lines, that's a DelDOT responsibility and project in moving the lines. So I don't quite understand the 1 versus 5 versus any, we can look into that. But I think the question that Barbara was raising is in terms of who's responsible and how does that all come about. And again, the BPW's policy and approach is if a property owner is requesting the extension, they put in the extension, it gets turned over to the BPW, it's then BPW infrastructure that others can tie into, assuming it's right-sized and the infrastructure is available. So I think the question is do you put it in at a size that can address the connections? Again, that becomes the conversations. BPW's typical approach is to say it's the property owner who is extending that. I think we have addressed a policy in the past that allowed the BPW carrying costs. That's a board decision, and there's a piece on that. But I think the ultimate question is, does the board want to put in the infrastructure to serve all 5, understanding what is that cost versus just the one?
Really, the cost difference. I mean, if you're running a 4-inch water main down there, that can more than serve 5 houses. If you're putting a 2-inch, force main for one house, that could do 5 houses too, an easy heat pump system. So there's really nothing you'd upgrade or downgrade for more houses because the pipe's already adequate for either.
Well, what I heard was, and I think it was from Mr. Palmer, that the force main could be 1¼ inch. And what type of maintenance issues does that bring up? Is a 1¼ inch line seems like it's much easier
Thing
to
is,
get
if
plugged.
you get too big a line, which is, we're not talking big lines, then you can get blockage
Yeah, 'cause it settles.
Because it settles.
You don't get the velocity, but
So I don't think it's a good idea either way, but it's doable. But I'm concerned about, I don't think the BPW should be paying any money on this. I think it should be turned over to them if it's put in at all. And I'd like to see it go in for everybody's sake, but I don't think we should be putting up almost $100,000 for even 4 houses.
What about the differential between putting in a smaller pipe and a pipe that could later accommodate the other homes?
As I said, 2-inch, 4-inch water can serve 4 homes easily.
4-inch, yes.
That's what would be required, 4-inch.
Right, but for the sewer,
But, you're only talking the pipe cost.
yeah.
Like he was saying, was pointing out previously, that the installation cost is the real cost. There's very little difference.
That'd be your decision.
yeah, I think, no way.
Yeah, I would just note, the 4-inch would be only if we do the 5 parcels. The single service to the house, Bob would have to make sure, he designs it to make sure he gets enough pressure to the house, but it's pretty much not gonna be a 4-inch, I can say that. So there's definitely a cost, a difference there, for
I didn't
sure.
understand that. I thought it was either way. So that would be a single lateral that we would take over?
Correct, yes.
So we would be installing a pipe of some size that is connected to the house, or the property, and extends 500 feet, 200 feet, some hundreds feet, which we become responsible for. And in the hereafter, the property gets sold outside the city, and we have this connection, and the new owner says, who the heck put in this thing? Doesn't work for us. We've got A, B, C, and who knows what. And now, BPW, you've got to fix your error. How could you put this in for just one property and accept the full responsibility in the hereafter for consequences that are really unique?
Good question. Would this be a dead-end line, and would we have problems with, with it because of that, similar to problems we have elsewhere where you're talking about dead-end lines?
If it's a service line, no, but if it's a main that's there, there's probably going to need to be some sort of blow-offs or hydrants put in.
There would be blow-offs, not hydrants.
Yeah.
Yep.
But a single service line, it would be, again, we're basically, you would be looking at a 500 or 600 foot service line that we would be responsible for instead of a normal, maybe 20-foot service line from the main, because we're responsible from the main to the curb stop anyway. So it's just a longer extension of what we would be responsible for.
So it would almost be better if it were just the one house that were served in terms of future problems with long lines that we have to maintain. Yes, no?
It's just more of a service line that we would have to maintain over, if it's a permanent main, and I don't want to use the word permanent because this service line could be permanent in itself. So it could be temporary if we wanted to in the future upsize for the 5, or it could just stay permanent and left as the way it is, and we would just be responsible for this 600-foot service line, water, sewer.
It can't be homeowner owned if it's in the state right away. Is that right?
Correct, it would have to be ours.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we would be responsible for it just like we are a regular service line now. It's just a longer distance, if that's how we want to do it and just accommodate the individual property owner.
And while I agree that BPW installing infrastructure without a request from the additional 4 homeowners is bad, given the location of these properties, it seems to me inevitable that with sea level rise, that their wells and their sewer systems, septic systems are not going to start failing. But that's not our problem. It just seems rather short-sighted from a total project, a community perspective. But I would not want to see us spending money to put in infrastructure that no one was going to tie into.
I guess then the question would be, is the board's willing to service this property using the concept of an individual owner running the distance of a force main pipe and a water line, service line, connecting to our main that's there now, and eventually taking ownership of that service line?
I don't see the downside there. That's on business side.
You always have pipes.
Yeah, but that's true of our entire infrastructure system.
This is for one house.
Yeah. Do they have an alternative, though? I mean,
Yes, and actually, I don't know, President Panetta, I don't know if it's appropriate for me to speak to some of the comments that were made. Certainly, your solicitor would probably be better and able to answer some of those questions. But Ms. Curtis, to answer your question, we do have another solution, and that would be to construct an elevated sand mound with pretreatment, which is not desired, but that is a solution. Mr. Pierkowski has an approved site evaluation for that technology.
And for water,
for water would be a private well.
And have you done any geotech samples as far as where?
No,
whether
not
you can
yet.
actually get water there?
Since we've been talking with the board, with Mr. Davis and Mr. Hearn, we've tabled further exploration to further private infrastructure because Mr. Pierkowski believes that the public option is the better long-term solution, not only for his interests, but also for Canary Creek.
If we have to take it over, is there any ability to hold ourselves harmless from them? I mean, could they agree to something if there are problems, they have to pay for it, cover it that way?
Yes.
Hold harmless for what?
For anything, if it breaks and you have to go out there and fix it, if it breaks and you have to go out there and fix it, or somebody, unintentionally breaks it, working on that area?
Anyone in particular?
You. No, I'm just saying, there's always potential to have to rip it up for some reason or other. Somebody rips it up that doesn't understand what it's for. So I think we have some liability. And why should we take that liability when they could cover it?
We can protect ourselves from that, but that would address the concerns of the 500-foot line to service one house.
It's going into a force main too, right?
Yes, sir.
Which I don't particularly like. My friend there in the back doesn't seem to have problems with them, but and he's much smarter than I am.
And just to clarify, so the concern on the upsizing is on the water side. There isn't a concern on the upsizing for the sewer side.
That's correct.
So you could upsize the sewer side with relative ease and then have the water side be.
It would be a single residential service, probably a size or two larger than what the board standard size is, just to circumvent pressure losses.
So is this for action or?
That's a great segue into, so as far as process in terms of where we are and what is needed. So if the board is interested in pursuing this solution, the next step is we would need a formal request from the property owner to apply for a CPCN. That would generate a resolution that would go on a board agenda, and per our charter, we need consent from Mayor and City Council. So it would go on Mayor and City Council's agenda, board agenda, then we'd apply for the CPCN, and that would have that process. So I think the threshold question today is whether this is something the board is willing to entertain to then set in motion the request for the petition for the CPCN and whatnot.
I think it's the right thing to do. I think, to protect Canary Creek and to assure that the residents have decent water. I think it's the right thing.
So, Chair, can I just ask a question? I know this is outside city limits, but as Council has said, it would come in front of us as well. And I think the question I can already hear from Council would be, and I don't know on the county policy, but so I'm much more knowing Virginia rural policy than Delaware. But I know in Virginia that if you extend a utility, it is, the burden is, responsibility is to notify the adjacent properties that there is a thought to do it, not a commitment. Because what you don't want to have in a situation is two people come back who aren't listening tonight and say, you're doing this and you never reached out to us. So I would just say that that's something I would think Council would be asking of you is, what is the due diligence that you notified the neighboring properties that there was a potential for them to participate?
And I'm not aware of an actual legal requirement, a legal notice requirement. There is a CPCN notice, and so the CPCN actually requesting the CPCN, that notice does go out. And I don't remember off the top of my head what that is, but there is notice on that. But the actual that we're putting a service line, I'm not aware of that. Now, that's the legal requirement versus you can always do your own due diligence and notice.
It would seem like it was just prudent to, formally notify the other 4 homeowners and formally get a yay, nay from them, not to hold the project up.
I think it's a good idea. I mean, I think it's desirable, but I wouldn't think that the BPW should put up any funds for it. And if they did it, that we would have some agreement that we wouldn't have any liability over and above the normal liability.
So am I understood to be simple about this, simplistic?
Simple, too.
Simple. The total cost of the initial installation of whatever it turns out to be, 1 or 5 sizes, and the rates that go along with those services are anticipated to be totally this particular property owner's responsibility. And BPW would only have a liability after we accept the installation for hereafter maintenance.
Well, I'm saying you have something to cover that, hold harmless agreement with them so that you don't have that either, over and above what you would for any other service.
So it's more of a money issue. It's a money and a environmental issue aspect that is being paid for by the owner, not by BPW or the city. And the owner understands the rates for that service. Is that simplistic enough, or am I missing something?
Is the hold harmless clause you're proposing for routine maintenance or catastrophic maintenance?
I guess I thought it was for both, but catastrophic would probably be the biggest problem.
Yeah, because I mean, I'm not sure that, end of life, replacing pipe, that falls into the same bucket as someone drilling a hole through the pipe. Right.
Right. I'm sort of on the page with Barbara, I think, which is you've got some properties that sooner or later will get compromised in both water and sewer. It's the right thing to do. It doesn't cost us too much, and I think we ought to go for it because it's, better to get people on water and sewer than having contamination problems elsewhere.
Question, how close to the city line is this property?
We're adjacent. There's city property west of us.
This isn't in our purview, but have they considered asking the city for annexation? And then we wouldn't need a CPCN, right?
That's what the city's going to.
No, but you'd probably need the other 4 to sign up.
When the request goes to the city for consent to approve us serving these properties, that is a conversation that's usually part of that. Is the city going to require them to annex, do a pre-annexation agreement, or not require them to annex at all? Mm-hmm. So that's going to be part of that conversation when, if the board wants to move forwards, then the consent request will go to the city. The city will have the conversation with either Mr. Palmer or the owner, and if that comes up as you need to annex and the owner doesn't want to annex, then that gets squashed.
If we do it for the reasons you're talking about, and I think they're great reasons, maybe we should make sure that whatever's installed is large enough. We're not talking big pipes, to take the other 3 or 4 houses. And that's just maybe going up a half the size of pipe, 1.5 inch. So it's not, really the installation is the big cost, not the pipe size.
I agree with that, Trish.
President Bonetta, Mr. Hearns indicated that the other 4 parcels that are north of Mr. Pierkowski's parcel are in the sewer CPCN for the board. And with that being the case, it's my understanding that DENREC would not approve a replacement septic system. This is something that the board would need to investigate, but I don't believe that a replacement septic system would then be permitted because essentially public sewer is available. So I don't know what X years is, but it is terminal, or it would be terminal under this proposal.
I think you're very correct on that.
You're right.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were grandfathered in, but
Yes, sir.
I'm kind of surprised that DENREC would even allow something like that. I mean, I don't know what the soils are like there, but they can't, but they're right on the marsh. I mean, it's right there. And I don't know that they would approve it.
Had the soils not been suitable for an elevated sand mound, they wouldn't. The majority of the parcel is not suitable for an on-site septic system, and so we are playing Tetris with building and driveways and yard and septic and space for a well. So it is in, as I said in the beginning, it is in Mr. Pierkowski's interest and desire to hook into public utilities, but there is a contingency plan that has been approved by DENREC subject to submitting a septic permit application.
If I can make a suggestion, I think that the threshold question that's before the board tonight is service of this property something that you all want to entertain? Because again, that sets in motion the other dominoes. If the answer is yes as a single line or even yes as an enhanced line, if the answer is yes under both, that sets in motion the other dominoes. And then the question of do you upsize or don't you upsize can be addressed at a future meeting. But I think the threshold question here today is, do you want to serve, whether as a single line, either as a single line or as an upsize, then that sets the other dominoes. If the answer is no, then it stops here. Or if the answer is yes, only if one, then that needs to be explored. But, and I'm not saying this very well, but if the answer is yes, as long as either occurs, then that's what we need. Did that make any sort of sense?
so let me try to put that into a motion that somebody can vote on that. So can I get a motion to continue down the path with either a single service to the property we're talking about, or potentially in the future, 5 services to this house and the 4 others that are existing going forward, so that we could take those actions and then apply for.
I think what I would recommend here today is there's not actually any action to take. It's a threshold question on, do we waste their time with a petition is really the point. And so if the consensus of the board here today is yes, go forward with the petition, then we can work with the applicant in getting that moving forward. When we come back with the resolution is when we should have the conversation of what is being upsized, if anything. But if this is going forward regardless of that's what I wanted to say. If this is going forward regardless of an upsizing, then that's the message to go forward with the petition. And is that the consensus of the board?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So then next step, we just need the formal request for petition, and we can connect directly on that.
Okay.
Mike, if I may, though, just a clarification, how that going to coordinate with the city side? Should then the BPW now send a request to the city to be placed on their next agenda for consent to serve this property?
let's talk, and then we'll talk timeline, and I want to make sure that the city has the answers to the questions that will come up when they come up. So let's connect on that timeline.
Yeah, it's just a timing thing because we'd have to have my Monday, because that's when their agenda's set for the 9th.
Right. So I think that would be a little bit premature for council because they'd have some questions. But if the request coming into BPW, if either we could be copied on it or you could forward it to us, then city management could start to look at and understand, and our council could look at it as well.
Because the consent letter comes from us.
Yeah, the request for the consent. I agree. I think the next meeting is aggressive. We need some time for those, but we'll talk overall schedule, timeline, and get those ducks in a row.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Open forum and general discussion on wastewater treatment plant. So we have Hans Medlar here from the county. We have been meeting with the county on a regular basis to draft the words for an agreement for Wolf Neck. We're making progress, and we hope to be proceeding along with, on the timeline of a draft agreement for us and the county by the end of June, and then mid-July, a public workshop so we get input from the ratepayers on the agreement and the process forward. And then, depending upon how the comments and that goes, setting a time frame for formalizing the agreement that would have to go between county council and the BPW board to proceed more formally, hopefully in, the September timeframe. So that's really the update I have on that. And Hans, is there anything you wanted to say? Well, is there anything you want to say? Is there anything you want to add?
Yeah, maybe just a couple of points, because everybody has seen the term sheet, and which outlines sort of in broad strokes what the intentions were between the board and the county. So that was the document we used with the chairman first to draft the agreement with council's assistance, and then our response, which you received this weekend. We are now in the process, working with our finance department, really fleshing out the operational charges and how they're determined and how they would tie in. And that's a little bit tricky for us because the board would be the first customer on a flow-based. We normally don't do flow-based. We are flow-based customers, but we don't have any flow-based customers. So we believe the agreement is very close to, I think, end of June. We should have a very good draft for the public to consider in July. And once I have the finance department's full support, I have the O&M charges with all the bases. And Robin and I had the opportunity to talk about that after the last meeting, using the City of Rehoboth's wastewater treatment plant categories sort of as a guide. And so we have incorporated that. I also significantly expanded on the description of the project. And that one is a little bit, that capital project outline and summary is eagerly awaiting GMB's evaluation of the water line. So as soon as you have that one, then that will be the final piece which goes into the capital. Because if it can be used, then it has to be, all the work associated with it has to be incorporated in the description. If it can't, then we'll lay a new pipeline. So the only open one in this big question is, let me just go back for a second. You may have seen the boat from our research team. They were out here for a few days. They took a lot of samples between the Roosevelt Inlet all the way down to Rehoboth Bay. So that's the pre-dredge baseline sample. That will be the basis of how we propose the study to DNRC, which will take place over the next 2 years. And that's, when you look at that study outcome, it drives where the outfall wants to be, whether it wants to be by the existing location or whether it wants to be in a different location, let's call it that in the broad sense. And it also will drive how the outfall technology looks. Obviously, there's the current technology, open pipe, and then there's some other technologies. So, and that is still open in the agreement when you read the agreement. And obviously, Chairman and I certainly discussed it at length. The agreement currently says that this is the process of how we arrive at this final step. And that's why when you look at the capital side, in the description of the capitals, it has this transmission back to the existing outfall or alternate technology in a different location. So these are the two. And this cannot be answered for the next 2 years. So that's why that agreement will have to be written that way based on that. So part of the agreement is the anticipation, and I don't know how much the board knows about that it has a companion document amending the current one, which would be the fourth amendment to the current agreement, which deals with the flow contributions in the interim while this process plays out, and that is going to be in there as well as the compensation for that. So we will have, when we present this jointly on the end of June, we will also have to have that fourth amendment drawn up, outlining it. The current agreement reflects the desire to do that, but it does, we went back and forth, and maybe if council wants to weigh in, at one time I was leaning towards incorporating it. However, the old agreement has to remain in place, the third amendment, until this new one's constructed. And the way it's currently written is that the old one would retire at the time of commissioning.
Yeah, I thank you very much. Don't want to go into a lot of the details now.
Oh, that was it, I was done.
Okay. But I just want to, Todd Lawson, Hans, and Gina have been really a pleasure to work with. And, you know, they understand our drivers and we understand their drivers, so we're moving forward.
So when do you anticipate to set the date for the first, we can look at it the first and give it a preliminary approval, or you can, or we can go to the workshop first and then wait for the comment of the public? How do you see the process?
Well, I see, we got your comments on Sunday. We're going through them, and I think we have to have one more round of discussion, and then we'll set the process for that. And I'm not sure which, I think it makes sense for us to go first, but I'm not willing to commit to that right now.
Yeah, because either entity will have to then make the document public.
Right.
And I discussed it today with the administrator. We have no preference, so it's just a matter of coordinating our schedules.
So, Chairman Panetta, do you want this as an agenda item, as an update on the June 9th council meeting? I mean, I assume you don't, but you're going to go to the county council. You're not?
No.
End of June?
No.
Okay.
End of June, we expect to have an agreement between the working group.
Okay.
And so it'll be after that.
Okay.
Just want to be real precise here, though.
Right.
So the goal is by the end of June to have a draft where both negotiating teams have high level said, yes, this is ready for public review and discussion and whatnot. So that is the point at which point it goes on to a workshop agenda, and it goes on to public meetings, and it goes on to public discussion as you go through the process. But there has to be something to discuss first. And that's where the goal is, to have that something by the end of June so that July can be that public process.
My thoughts at this point is that I don't think either body should take it to the boards until after the public workshop.
Yeah,
We
That was
want
never-
to,
that was
we want to
never the
get the
intent.
public's opinion on it.
No.
So,
but in my opinion, the workshop has the document, like council pointed out, which has no further comments from the, let's call it, negotiating team.
So if the city can help in any way when you get the public workshop scheduled, we're all in to help in any way to promote it or whatever else you need. Because we are getting a reasonable amount of questions, not over the top, but what's the latest? Right?
direct them to the board.
Absolutely, without question. I haven't answered any of those.
Or maybe you guys should answer them.
No, we don't want to answer those. Those are
All
yours.
right.
Why not?
Thanks, Hans.
Thanks.
Any other questions from the board on? Moving on, open forum discussion on Lewes BPW drug and alcohol policy. Kim's not here. Oh, there she's in the back. You're hiding behind Ben.
And also, I'm smart enough to know what I don't know, and so this is an area that my colleague knows very well, Lauren. So I am going to hand off any legal questions to my colleague on this topic.
Thank you, Lauren.
Hi, everyone.
Oh,
So this was brought before you like 2 months ago, so, and you had made some suggestions, and then we reviewed it, me and Lauren reviewed it. So do you have any questions on the changes or any updates?
But one, I have 3 copies of it, one all kind of marked up, one, and they all have the same headings. Which is the right
The
one?
one with the markups was what we changed from before, and then the one with no markups is what the employees would see.
I have 2 that start with 7.3, drug-free and alcohol workplace.
Maybe you just got a duplicate. I told you my printer's crazy.
I'm
You
sorry?
just received a duplicate copy.
Oh, okay.
And if I could, just some context, I think, to help set the stage on this. Obviously, we are coming back, so there were questions, and I think that the confusion from last month was generated where you did not have the red line. And so keep in mind that what generated the changes in front of you are there is an existing drug and alcohol policy in the employee handbook. And that has been revised, as shown in the red line changes, to address what is now legal marijuana. And so the changes in state law regarding marijuana. So that was the background on why what you see in front of you was done. But it was a change to existing policy, and the red line kind of shows what those are. Doesn't mean you can't ask broader questions, so just keep in mind that this is coming to you as a revision to an existing policy.
I have a lot of problems with it still. And they're philosophical problems, I guess, and because marijuana is now legal. I think I've done some research around this, and fit for duty testing, I think, would be good to have as part of this. Something that measures cognitive impairment. Excuse me. It may not be something we can do, but I think we should consider it. There are tests out there that will measure cognitive impairment easily and quickly. So, in particular, my biggest problem with it is we have a number of people who are designated as safety sensitive, or a number of positions. And if any of those people use marijuana legally over the weekend when they're not, when they're not prohibited from it, and then they happen to be one of the people randomly picked for quarterly sampling, and marijuana shows up in their urine, which it will do because it can have a half-life 14 days, 30 days, depending on how often you use it. it seems like there ought to be a backup way of testing whether they were impaired on the job. That's my number one philosophical problem with it. The other thing is there are a couple places in the policy where there's discussion of federal and then later discussion of state requirements. And I'm guessing federal is there because marijuana is still illegal under federal law. But the drug paraphernalia definition cites Delaware law. So just some clarification on those issues and whether there's anything we can do to protect people in safety-sensitive positions who may fail a drug test but not be impaired.
I do know that there is a new form that they do have out there, the state of Delaware does do for random testing, that you can choose not to test for marijuana, but you can test for all other illegal drugs. It is just a different panel you choose. And that's always an option as well.
And that would have to be part of our policy if it were. Okay.
However, for those who have a CDL license, we have no option. That comes from the state. They cannot test positive for marijuana. That is a state requirement. And most of our safety-sensitive employees, they have their CDLs.
So really, what you're asking is all safety-sensitive BPW employees commit to never using marijuana. Which, is that going to create a problem with finding employees? I mean, in the future?
They didn't
It
have a
seems
problem
unfair.
before.
It seems unfair that, well,
I was gonna say,
I had a problem
Lauren,
with this, I had a problem with this last time, because you're pinpointing marijuana, but you're completely leaving out alcohol and the rest of
well,
it.
that was already in the policy before.
I know that, but,
Right.
I mean, with the changes of legalized marijuana, someone smoking, on a weekend is not impairment during the week.
Correct.
But because of the testing, it can be picked up for 15 to 30 days. So, that doesn't happen with alcohol. So why are we penalizing what is a legal drug in Delaware different from alcohol? And I agree about, being able to obtain. Now, the CDL license is totally different thing outside of our control, but I think it's to take that and make it a general policy, I'm not sure that's equitable.
Lauren, that's a question for you.
Sure. Yeah. So when this policy came to me, it looks a lot like the form and template policies that the Drug-Free Workplace Act asks employers who receive federal funding to use. And I guess that's a first threshold question. If, if the Lewes BPW is a recipient of federal funding over 100K, I think it is, then it does have to make a commitment to a drug-free workplace as part of, being deemed a qualified recipient of the grants. And this is where we're seeing that tension play out between marijuana or cannabis still being regulated as a controlled substance under federal law, but it's, legal in Delaware. And I would say there's also caveats for medical marijuana use in Delaware that, some of these changes and revisions are designed to help stay in compliance with. So we have this tension between if we are a recipient of federal funding and we want to maintain our status that way, we have to have some kind of drug-free policy that accounts for, prohibiting unlawful use of substances. And right now, unlawful substance is marijuana in the federal level. So Delaware law still allows employers to prohibit the use of marijuana on their premises during work hours. There's just this tension now between, I hear what you're saying, it's really hard to craft a policy that reaches all of these types of concerns. And so if this is maybe a philosophical question that the board has and it wants to go in a different direction than what is right now a zero tolerance policy, that's kind of what we started with and what we've been working with. And it seems like we're trying to move away from this zero tolerance concept. And if that's the case, then we don't have to use the current template, which is kind of designed around that philosophy. If it makes more sense to have, more of a customized policy that really gets down to, well, what do we want our employees to, what do we want to mandate and prohibit in our own workforce, keeping in mind that we do have CDL holders and we do have federal funding. The Drug-Free Workplace Act doesn't say thou shall have a zero tolerance policy. You just aren't supposed to be permitting the unlawful use, manufacture, distribution, dispensation of a controlled substance in the workplace. So that's your guardrails. You don't have to use the template policy that a lot of employers feel safe and comfortable with, that, this complies with the Drug-Free Workplace Act. So maybe that's kind of a base question for the board to consider, do we want a zero tolerance policy? Do we want something with more flexibility? Another thing I would offer for your consideration is, when you start trying to define things that don't have definitions in the statutes, like what does impairment mean when we don't have a Delaware law saying this is how impairment's defined, or this is how being under the influence is defined. That can be tricky. Having a positive drug test may or may not be impairment in the workplace, as everyone has kind of pointed out. So that's a long-winded answer, but I think maybe having kind of is a zero tolerance policy what we want? And if not, then what are kind of the other options? I think you can have more of a flexible policy that maybe eliminates some of the references to, we're not going to tolerate any use of drugs, allowing a little bit more flexibility around interpreting what happens if a positive test results, but not giving yourself, you don't want to put yourself into a corner then where under the policy, you have only so many options. I think there's an art to crafting policies and employee handbooks, and the more flexibility the employer reserves for itself, the easier it is, and to be consistent in how you implement the policy for some of these more challenging situations where you do want to give a little bit of leniency, but you don't want to look like you're treating more favorably one employee over another. So I'll stop there in case that triggers any other thoughts or questions.
We have, as written currently, a zero tolerance policy, pretty much, and we're trying to adjust that for marijuana. Is there anyone who's successfully crafted one that you would know of that might be a different template to address? Or would that be, Greenfield, let's dream, which we'd probably never get right?
Yeah, there's no one size fits all. Every employer is a little different. Generally with municipalities, they all kind of fall in the same, they have the same or similar issues, types of employees, categories, classes. So, thinking of our other municipal clients who've had drug and alcohol policies, I can think of a couple that maybe started off with a policy just like this and pivoted in a different direction where they, made some more modifications to be a little bit more flexible and less zero tolerance, but more, we're not going to tolerate illegal substance use for sure, but here's some more parameters and guidelines on how we're going to be testing for and implementing discipline on, positive test results for certain subcategories.
So, I'm not going to get my high horse, but I will say, I worked in nuclear power for 30 years. and there was a zero tolerance policy, because we were on, as a licensed operator, I was on call 24/7, and no matter what. But that was a different era. And the fact is that the federal government has given little credibility to themselves by making marijuana a class 1 narcotic, the same as cocaine, methamphetamine, and everything else, when they're perfectly happy to let people drink. So, the feds have done themselves no benefit, and the fact that they're letting the states make their own laws, is kind of, them admitting to that. So I do think we're in the 21st century now, and we should be having don't want to put anyone at risk, and I don't want to put the public at risk, but then by the same token, if we're going to go to zero tolerance on this, let's prohibit drinking. I mean, that's really what you're saying. And I'll get off my horse.
We want zero tolerance on impairment in the workplace. And that's really what we need, is a policy that measures impairment. And, the drug testing for marijuana doesn't measure that. Unless I'm wrong, unless there's a way to get a more sophisticated drug test, or to combine it with a cognitive impairment test at the same time.
Almost like Sharon stated, as with all the CDL licenses, they're not allowed to at all. That's bottom line, is they're not allowed to at all, because it was stay in your system because they hold a CDL license. That's the Fed, because they follow the federal law. And since the federal law right now doesn't identify or doesn't legalize marijuana, it supersedes the state law. So that's where that would go in effect for all our, that's most of our safety-sensitive employees that are the field staff that are CDL drivers.
It also doesn't cover people who are taking prescribed drugs that may impair their performance. And
It
if
does
they
have
cause,
one there, non-illegal and legal.
yeah, but what do you do about someone who is impaired and they're taking the legally prescribed drugs? How do you catch them? How do you prevent them from harming themselves or others? I think the whole idea of fit for duty is something that needs to be looked at more closely. I mean, people, yes, this is a drug-free policy, but people can be impaired for other reasons. They had a big fight with their wife. They haven't slept in 5 days, There's lots of reasons for impairment. And we're just looking at a small subset in this policy. I don't know, I don't have an answer, but I wish there were. I have seen that there are companies, like mining companies and others, who have tests, that only take like a minute or so, that employees have to use before they start their workday. And that seems to me like a lot more fair. I don't know what those tests cost.
You have to come with Wordle already solved.
Yeah, right. But there are ways to test. Oh, okay. There are ways to test impairment, which would be a lot more fair than testing what's in your urine or blood.
Well, where do we go? Because Barbara's raised an excellent point. This is a little more liberal than it was. We're really in the electricity and sewage business. Are we going to be the people to rewrite this?
I'm hearing kind of two different categories of substance. So the first point is you do have your existing policy, which, to Lauren's point, was based off of this kind of template that you need to check the box when you have your funding. So we want to be careful that we don't upset that apple cart. We want to be mindful of that in whatever revisions are made. And so the threshold question on that piece is, do you want to maintain the zero tolerance, which has been the current policy, or do you want us to look into something more lenient, but making sure it still fits and checks that box on federal funding? I think that's the first question. The broader question is, do you want staff to look into a broader fit for duty impairment policy outside of the context of what we need to check the box? So I think you have two questions that we're asking for direction to staff. What do you want to do relative to the check the box drug and alcohol policy? And then do you want staff to look at the broader fit for duty? Maybe we take the first one first. What's the sense of the board? Do you want staff to look at something a little less than zero tolerance and come back to the board? Or do you want to move forward with what is essentially a zero tolerance consistent with current policy?
We certainly don't want to lose funding, but yes, if there's something a little less than this, I would be in favor of it.
So would I.
Talking about something like a second chance or something like that, if you.
I don't know, maybe Lauren can inform us what else is out there.
Yeah, a second chance is a little different. That's, assuming you've already violated the policy once, at least once. It's a program that allows you to basically get your act together and try again. It's just like its name implies. But I think the policy should speak first to, well, what about initial violations and how do we handle those? We could certainly incorporate the use of second chance as an option for policy violations that is consistent with the Drug-Free Workplace Act from what I've seen. And maybe that's, one way of approaching it. It's like we have the positive test or we have the infraction. Now what? We can have a zero tolerance as a threshold, but with certain exceptions or certain paths to follow, which could include a second chance program or employee assistance program or something other short of absolute termination. Again, carving out the CDL license holders.
If it was just second chance, I would not agree to it because you're basically saying the policy is legal or is sending the right message. And so we catch you once and then, so I'm.
Is there, does it just kind of wane off slowly over time? And if somebody had just a trace that it wouldn't apply to, you set a limit of that as the second chance? Whereas somebody is really smoked up, that can't function. Is there anything
It's going
in
back
between?
years, but I'll tell you, the NRC and the nuclear issues policy, the problem is that it's very individual because it's fat soluble. And so how people metabolize it and how much gets stored and how it gets stored from your fat and transferred to your urine. Two people can smoke the same amount and have different results. So.
I mean, it's a really quadrant to go through, but I think either somebody's done it someplace else, but we shouldn't be reinventing it. 'Cause
I can't
We could spend
believe-
our wheels forever
I
trying
can't
to
believe
get
there
the
isn't
perfect.
someone who doesn't have a better template than this.
And again, that's not saying, to the point, this was taking your current policy and updating it based on the change in the law. If the board would like us to take a look at some alternative options, it sounds like that's where the consensus sits. And so on that first question, we're happy to do that. And so staff will work together to come back with some alternative
Well, I haven't heard from
solutions.
Bob or Richard on this.
If we have a zero tolerance policy that checks the boxes for funding, what's the implication for someone who gets caught? Is it like you're fired? We send you to jail? We ostracize you? Make you sit in the corner? What?
Is it publicly noticed?
What happens?
Yeah.
You have this policy that's zero tolerance, and now somebody gets caught. because they violated zero tolerance, what happens to them? What does the policy now say?
Right now, the consequences for having a positive drug test are, it's set forth in the policy. It just says will be subject to discipline up to and including termination. So again, there is some flexibility there. You don't have to terminate someone immediately if somebody tests positive for marijuana, let's say. And there is, again, a degree of flexibility baked in a little bit already where it says, depending on the circumstances, the employee's work history and record, any state law requirements, the Board of Public Works can offer the employees who violate this policy or test positive an opportunity to return to work on a last chance basis. It's kind of the second chance concept that we've talked about, to mutually agreeable terms. And it talks about, like, details the costs of follow-up testing, et cetera. So there's no bright line rule, and I would never tell an employer to have bright line rules for this kind of thing because of how individualized it is and how difficult it is to define what something like impairment is when it is so individual. So there is a degree of tolerance, or not tolerance, but flexibility on consequences. And that's always a best practices kind of pointer when you have a handbook in general. You want to have a flexible range of options for if you're going to have discipline for violations. You don't want to have to be cornered into terminating someone, and you don't want to have to be kind of handcuffed from taking more drastic action depending on the circumstances. So having more flexibility tends to be a better path or a better best practice, which is why I think we're a little reluctant to try to go in the ahead, like have an elaborate scheme for what impairment means or what it doesn't mean. Just makes it a little difficult, and it puts it in tension with having more flexibility and determining, what the consequences are for something like impairment.
So it sounds like we already have the flexibility with a zero policy that checks the box that lets us get the money. And what needs to be addressed, if possible, or researched, explored, is Barbara's concern of the fit for duty. How can we add that to the flexibility list? Because we don't seem to have that, or it doesn't seem to exist that we can put our hands on as yet. And that seems to be an effort that's maybe more useful, helpful, and effective than trying to define more flexibility.
So
It's a focus of, hey, this is a phrase that makes sense.
like we're going there, except if a person tested positive 7 days after the fact, would it go into his employment record?
Now, if it was a CDL driver, yes, because they're not allowed to have that at all.
Right.
And that's all the people that we're talking about. We're talking about the field staff, basically. And then you have one for the office staff. So it's split 10-10, realistically, the policy. It would be split 10.
The CDL and anything that's driven by federal law, that's totally separate. But for everyone else.
But they're not safety-sensitive employees, so they don't get randomly tested. They're not in that drug pool test. If that makes a difference as well. Unless it's suspicion, and then you would have to, during work hours, if you notice them during work hours, then if you have reasonable suspicion or an accident during work hours, then that's one of those that you would get them tested.
Well, it seems to me like this is, as written, is a little more lenient and less ferocious than our other one, but would still be called a zero tolerance policy and satisfy the money issue. I would recommend we pass this and just continue to think about the part that Barbara's raised, Richard's articulated so well, of what do you do next, or how the general manager handles each situation becomes important. But you can't go so far as to rewrite it out of what's zero tolerance.
I think I
could go along with that only if we took in parallel the path of looking for other templates and other means that would be
Well, I
more.
mean, Barbara raises a very good question, and if I had to solve Wordle before I came to work, I'd be late every day.
I wouldn't be here, so.
But,
Spell.
there's probably things you can do that sort of work in that direction, and maybe there are some. But yeah, the marijuana thing is a trap at this point. And it lingers, and as I just said to the mayor, this group must have graduated from college somewhere in the late 60s.
Point is,
And know a little bit too much about something. But I think we sort of need to do this and move on with how we treat people once found and address the fitness for work.
I can support that.
but I think what I'm missing out of there is, and look at what other companies are doing.
Oh, yeah, I don't think the journey is over.
No,
If
I'm
Lauren
willing
had
to,
said, I've got a great template, I would have said, let's see it, but she didn't really say that.
No.
I wish I had a great template. It would solve a lot of my problems.
Just also as a matter of process, just confirmed with Sharon. So recall that the board recently adopted the adoption policy. I am not speaking well tonight. Yes, that's right. But the point is, so your threshold question tonight is whether you set this for publication. Then it is published and action would be before the board at the next meeting. And so the question on all the policies before you tonight is to go forward with publishing it for public comment, but you're not taking action. So you do have some time to noodle it over. And so the threshold question again is just, do you advance it to be published and then take it up at the next meeting?
that is the actual action. To put it up, put it forward.
Post it, yeah.
Post it, that's right.
Right, so we do have to take a vote to do that?
Correct, yes, so you would, right, do you go forward? But the point is you're not adopting the policy, and so you can take public comment, come back next month and say, we want to change something or do that or whatnot, that's.
Do I have a motion to accept the policy and put it on notice for the next meeting for a public comment?
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
You're technically publishing it for public comment,
Yes,
and
right.
then you'll
We're
take
not
action.
accepting it yet, we're just accepting
Right.
it as for public.
Barbara, if you could send me the research that you found on those cognitive tests, I'm very curious about them because, defining what impairment means is one of the hardest things that we're supposed to do here. And I just want to make sure that we're also keeping in mind some of our other laws, like the Americans with Disabilities Act, and just making sure we're not running afoul of any other laws and requiring some kind of fitness for duty at the outset. So, but I'm really curious about what you have been able to find. They seem like they could potentially work. So I'd like to take a look at those.
Happy to share it with you, Lauren. Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Item 12, open forum, general discussion on implementing credit card fees for payment transactions. Kim?
So
And
this
this is
has,
another rerun.
yes, this has become quite a collaborative project. So for the credit card fees, we are making a recommendation of putting a convenience fee lower than what we're actually collecting, because there is a bill being passed around that it would be illegal to collect more fees than what you're paying. So each card individually collects a different fee, different from what's at the counter and what's online, and then each card holder, Visa, MasterCard, et cetera, et cetera. So our recommendation would be either to do a 0.5% convenience fee or nothing at all until this bill or the law shakes out of whether it's going to be passed.
State law?
Who are the sponsors? Do we know?
There's no rush on this one. Just wait and see what the law says. Talk about it.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I needed the pill. Thank you. Can we hold off on this and consider it probably next month or whenever
Sounds
if and
like-
when,
End of
if and
June.
when.
End of June,
much
the
does this
legislative
cost?
session
Yeah.
ends, right?
So if it's
I think it was 32,000 for a
Yeah,
year.
for the year, I think it was
Yeah.
32 or 36, I can't remember.
It was
But
32.
but I will say, when we switched over to NISC, which is our billing system, we were paying 4 times more to that credit card vendor. So we've already slashed our cost. We have very, very low rates that we pay.
I liked the idea of 1% with the extra going to help people pay their bills.
1% would be considerably over.
Yeah.
I think on average, it's like 0.6% that we pay, but the lowest is around 0.4%. It's not even a whole percent we pay.
The primary sponsor is Senator Huxtable. The additional sponsor is Senator Townsend, Representatives Harris and Lambert. Co-sponsors Senator Siegfried, Sturgeon, Representatives Morrison, Osinski, Ross Levin, and Wilson and Todd. So you have leadership on the bill.
Okay, so I think then we should wait. Yeah.
Okay.
So we'll put this off. December, it'll have to be the July workshop then, or the July meeting.
Do you want me just to wait until we hear about this bill and then, because it may be a couple months, it may not be next month. Yeah,
No, because
But it'll be over June 30th.
yeah.
Not necessarily, that's just this leg. And so it could
Yeah.
be
That's
future
next-
leg, it could be.
Yeah, yeah. So we'll just keep an eye on it, and if it does pass, we'll bring it back.
Well, what about the 5%, the 0.5% though? I mean, is there any value to implementing that now? We would be, I don't know.
18,000.
This is just more confusion for our ratepayers though. For now.
It's a good point.
Gone this far.
There's also a stipulation that we are not allowed to charge debit cards. That means we would have to get new equipment for the front desk. Yes, it's very complicated. So we would have to put out that initial cost. I don't know what that is off the top of our heads. Yeah,
Got it.
yeah.
All right. Item 13, open forum general discussion.
I have
on-
31 dividers.
You have what?
31 dividers in my book.
Yeah, but not all of them
We're
have
getting there
something.
close. Open forum general discussion on receiving the re-delineation of the Lewes-Rehoboth Beach wellhead protection study. Robin?
What you have in front of you is a final report that was completed by the University of Delaware at the request of the BPW back in June of '23. We signed an agreement with University of Delaware, DENREC, to complete an updated delineation map of our wellhead protection areas. This covered the Lewes and Rehoboth area. We absorbed the majority of the cost for that, a 90-10 split. We were on the 90% end. The total cost was it was like $79,000. What this does, again, with all the development going on in this area, as we all probably know, taking away some of the groundwater recharge in the wellhead protection area. As the report shows, it has modified a little bit from what was done in, I think 2003 was the last study that was done. Barbara, Tom, and I think, attended a Zoom meeting. I think Tom was there in February. They kind of give us a preliminary review of the report. The final report was sent to us in April. So Barbara did have some questions, and the gentleman that did it did answer the questions, some of the questions that was responded. As you see, the map has changed some, and some of the flow directions have changed by the what's shown in the map. Just basically is just receiving this report that was done by the University of Delaware. I don't know if any really action is required.
I have a recommendation. If and when we do another one of these in the future, I think we should approach Rehoboth Beach and Tidal, whatever their name is, and get joint funding for an update.
We did.
And they didn't?
They said, thank you very much. Go ahead and do it, and we'll take the report.
Is the public knowledge of the information?
Yes, that was so much fun. Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Why would that surprise you, Bob?
And DENREC was happy to kick in their 10%.
Yes, after much kicking and screaming.
Yeah.
This was not a,
Were we required to do this?
No, it wasn't a
No,
requirement. No.
okay.
It just was knowing
We
that
did
with all what's
preventative-
going on.
and with all the development across the street
Yeah.
and just in general.
Do you know why do they exclude the agricultural and individual wells? I mean, some of these agricultural wells, when you see the irrigation systems running in the fields, I mean, they pump a lot of water. Is this just a political thing where they didn't want to get?
I don't know if they can monitor them.
I think it's an access thing.
It's
Yeah.
what?
There's no metering on them.
I think metering's easy.
I mean, you could, yeah.
Metering's easy. I mean, you can put a meter on.
They
Well,
just,
there are no meters on the agricultural
I'm
wells.
saying they could meter this.
Right, but, and they're pulling from a different section of the aquifer. And actually, the driver behind this was the year where we had depleted. Remember, there were all the agricultural wells that were going dry? That was one of the drivers behind this, was to get an idea of what the Columbia Aquifer was doing.
It would just seem it would be more comprehensive if they had that information too.
But
Yes.
there were people in power at the time that were not overly willing to help.
But there are a lot of individual wells out there.
Yeah, if you notice in their conclusion section, they say, another limitation is the absence of actual observation data within the pumping well capture zones, which would provide direct validation measurements and serve as an
I
early
don't know if
warning.
it's in this report or if it's in a developer's report where they stated that, by developing farmland, you're actually conserving the aquifer. No more than that.
So what do we do with this, or what does it mean, or, I mean, the concern has always been our wells and
Well, we are putting in the monitoring wells as a result. This helps us to clarify where to put them. It
And it
tells
was-
us that the water level is basically stable at this point, and it was not what I was hoping for, but
and wait 10 years and do it again.
Yeah. We did find out that there are wells on the city property. And we hadn't known that before, so
Individual wells.
They're not being used as monitoring wells.
they're monitoring
They're not
wells,
being
yeah,
used for anything.
near the library.
all right, item 14, open forum, general discussion of final acceptance of Mariner Retreat. Robin?
Mr. President, we'll need to remove this from the agenda. There's still a couple open items that need to be addressed. Hopefully, we'll put it back on for next month.
Open forum, general discussion on reestablishing the Finance Committee committee. Richard?
Yes. We looked at, the Finance Committee looked at the original resolution which established the Finance Committee and made changes to better define the makeup of the committee and the fact that there was, each committee member may had a voter, a right to vote for anything that was going to be passed on as a recommendation to the board. So this is an amendment or resolution to the original resolution, which the Finance Committee recommends that the board accept and include in the policies.
On the question?
Yeah, I had a question. In section 4, I'm wondering if you're being too hard on yourselves, where you say the co-chair shall file the minutes with the board no later than 21 days after each meeting.
It was in the original resolution and it wasn't worth changing.
But does it happen? Is this an opportunity to change that if it's not reasonable? Just a question.
The answer is, yes, it could be changed. We could change it to 22 days or 40 days or
For a reasonable time.
reasonable time.
Mike, I don't know if it matters, but in the charter, towards the board minutes, not necessarily committee minutes, it does say 21. I think that's kind of where we got that language. Is that correct?
I will take your word for it. I can double check right now. Well done, Sharon. What she said.
Are you comfortable with it? You think it's workable? I mean,
Yes.
okay.
Okay.
Because we now have the advantage of our sidekick AI.
Yes, I love it.
I do have just, and I can, if it be the will of the board, I can just call them out here, and if you're comfortable with it, we make that change and keep it simple. More kind of high level, so lines 29, 30, the date should be added. It just says this day of blank, so obviously we will fill that in. That's pretty easy to do. Line 28, I think we remove acting from acting board treasurer. Should just be the board treasurer. And I would change 4 to 5 since the positions listed are now 5. I think they previously used to be 4. Again, these are technical changes, typos of the like. And line 90 should technically read, determined by a majority vote of a quorum of finance committee members present. It's just a phrasing issue.
But the ex officio member votes.
Yes, under
Yes.
this iteration, yes.
As
Mr. President,
do,
this is a
as do
Tuesday.
Robin and Kim.
Yes.
As do Robin and Kim.
Yeah.
So do I have a motion to approve the resolution with the amendments that Mike had made?
2 steps, so title only and then.
I'm sorry. I'm taking after you. Do I have a motion to read by, the resolution by title only?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. President, members of the board, resolution number 25-004. A resolution of the Board of Directors of the Board of Public Works of the City of Lewes regarding reestablishing the Finance Committee. Mr. President, resolution number 25-004 has been read by title only and placed before the board for its consideration and adoption.
Now what I said before. Do I have a motion to
So moved.
approve the resolution with the additions that Mike Hoffman read into the record?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Sixteen.
16, open forum and general discussion on Finance Committee recommendations, amendments to the Capitalization Threshold Policy. Mr. Nichols again, and Kim.
This is one change that reflects an update, a needed update from when the capital expenditure limit was $5,000 to not 105,000, but 10,000. And just to keep all of the other purchases as they were.
Is this a policy, so it will need to be posted?
Yes.
Yes, okay. I move that we post this as a draft policy.
Second.
Favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Does this have the same number as it says 2204? That was the original resolution, okay.
25.
Yeah.
Open forum and general discussion on Finance Committee's recommendation for amendments to the capital budget policy. Richard and Kim.
Do you want me to take it?
Yes.
So this policy was one sentence. We didn't add too much to it. We just included that it must be approved by the board before the beginning of the new fiscal year, to actually put that in writing, because it was not in there.
What we were doing.
Yes.
Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the change?
So moved.
It needs to be posted.
Post it.
Same thing.
To post it, yeah. I'll
To post it.
second.
So motion to post it?
Motion to post it, yes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Is that it?
Okay, board requests for agenda items. Or we can just do as we usually do. as it gets closer to the next meeting, send in requests to Robin. So Bill from the Cape Gazette is not here tonight. Call to the public. You've been
Patiently
very
waiting.
patient.
I hope you were entertained in the meantime.
The public has arrived. I'm Taylor Cameron. Congratulations, Madam Mayor and office holders. I live at 512 DuPont Avenue. I was here at your December meeting, brought a little sample of my water with me, and there was some discussion about it. Just to refresh your memory, my home is right at the end of DuPont Avenue. We got our CO in August. We moved in the 21st of August. There was a home there that was demolished, and we built our home with the help of some great craftsmen and women here in town, and love it until we tried to drink the water, and it was staining all of our fixtures. It was ruining our clothes and our laundry, and our pets wouldn't drink it. So I came here and asked for your help. One of the things that you have been doing is you put a automatic flusher on a hydrant and right there at entrance to the Fred Thomas building. But that's only really helpful in the warmer months, because if it's sheet draining across the road at a bus stop in front of the Fred Thomas building, it creates a dangerous situation. So in January, at that meeting, you guys said that you might come up with a more permanent solution to drain that under the road, and I'm curious if you could update me on that.
It's actually installed. If you go out there and look, there, it comes off the meter.
I was afraid you were going to say that, but you might want to wait to hear from him, because it's not.
The automatic flusher was put back on the fire hydrant that's down by the old Fred Thomas building. We have purchased a automatic flusher that will be located closer to the entrance of the park. That's going to discharge directly into the storm drain. So that flusher will be utilized all year round. That's the way to alleviate that, because the water won't be running across the street.
So are you familiar with what they tried to do in January?
That they tried to do in January. I know that they did something with the tap, but they're waiting till the school gets out because of the bus traffic to do it, to be able to cut across the street, under the street, to run that line.
Yeah, so in January, they came out and dug like a 8-foot square hole right in front of our house. Tried to dig the hole, had to go get more equipment, because the equipment they originally brought wasn't sufficient to dig the hole. So they went and got more equipment, dug the hole, spent, 4 or 5 hours trying to drill into the main, unsuccessfully, to put a wet tap on the main. When they abandoned that effort, they put the cardboard box that the wet tap came in over the hole in the pipe and filled it back in.
I wasn't aware of that, and again, I can follow up with our supervisor about that.
And left the muddy hole in front of our house. So I'm wondering what's going to happen next if I come and complain. Is there going to be a bigger muddy hole in front of my house?
I have to apologize, because I was out there bike riding the other day, specifically went by and saw the trench across the road.
There's not a trench across the road in front of my house. There's a hole about this big in front of my house.
No, there's a cut in the road going to the heights, and so I misstated, and I apologize for that. But it sounds like we need to.
Yeah, this is the first I heard of that. I just know that they were going to install after school to connect that so it runs directly into the storm drain, discharges, so that way the freezing issue won't be a problem.
Okay, so just so we're clear, that that flusher, that automatic flusher, runs 3 times a day for 15 minutes. When we built our house, we had to run a flow test on that hydrant. And that hydrant pumps just under 500 gallons per minute when it's opened. That runs for 45 minutes a day. That's 650,000 gallons a month that you're dumping into the storm drains. That empties the water tower twice in a month. You guys are okay with that?
As an interim till we get the lines replaced, not sure, would we like to be continuing to drain water? No, but it's an interim measure to address the old water lines out there.
Okay. All right.
Do you see something?
Yeah, replacing the main.
Well, yeah, but it's in process.
Can you explain that? Where are we in that process of replacing that main?
It's not on the agenda tonight.
And I just want to interject here. So this is the opportunity to provide public comment, and you've provided your public comment. I think there's something that Mr. Davis has to look into, but this is not appropriate for a question and answer in combative tone. So certainly you're welcome to provide your comments, and the board will take those, look into them, but the back and forth is not permitted.
Okay. Then I'll just, it's my understanding that in previous, and I'm sorry if this may take the form of a question, but in previous instances when the water has been stained, dirty due to issues with the pipes, that you've reimbursed homeowners, or as you call them, ratepayers, for the property damage. Is that correct? Is that correct?
Again, we can look into, if you've got instances, again, we can look into that. My recommendation is again, offer your comments. If there's follow-up, we'll follow up.
Yeah, so my comment would be, I would like to be reimbursed for the property damage that I've suffered because of the stained water, just as you've done for people on Violet Town Road and other places around town when the stained water has damaged their property.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Is there anyone online? Josh?
No.
All right. Do I have a motion to go into an executive session?
Take the motion.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.